Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to teach you how to make some easy meatballs that are gluten-free, keto, yada yada yada, all those things. We're going to use 97% lean ground beef. We're going to use Parmesan cheese. This is grated Parmesan cheese. If you're going gluten-free, make sure it says gluten-free in it. Sometimes they add different things to make it separate. You can also grate your own. Same thing goes for the spices. We're going to use fresh crushed garlic, garlic powder, onion flakes, and Italian seasoning. Again, if they're gluten-free, if you're going gluten-free, make sure that they are gluten-free as well. Salt and an egg or two, depending on how many meatballs you're going to use. It's 2 eggs per pound of meatballs. Okay? And I decided to make these because we're going gluten-free and eventually we may go to like keto or paleo. We're not really sure. So I wanted to just trying a couple of different experiments, and these happen to come out really good. So we went ahead and sharing it with you guys. So even though I said you're going to use 2 eggs per pound of ground beef, this is actually, I've split this recipe in half because there's a few different recipes coming up in the next couple of days that I use the other half of the ground beef for, so I'll share them with you in a little bit. All right, so I am not measuring officially measuring like with measuring spoons, but I will tell you for 1 pound of ground beef you will use 2 eggs, a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, which may sound like a lot, so then you want to monitor your salt. We're going to use the equivalents of 2 cloves of garlic, finely chopped, minced, or I'm using the jarred garlic, and at least I like a tablespoon of Italian seasoned blend. And then we're going to use 2 teaspoons of garlic powder and a tablespoon of minced onion. Okay, so you can also add to this fresh parsley. Whenever my pop made meatballs, he always added fresh parsley, Italian parsley chopped, but we don't have that here. And it's not as cheap here as it was in New York. So to add it just to give that clean flavor, you can always add dry if it's less expensive where you are. And again, not everybody likes that green fresh taste. But then you're just going to mix everything together just like we made meatballs in the past. I'm using my hand, the God-given tools, clean of course. And then I'm going to use my cookie scoop to make meatballs. This is just 1.5 times speed, just because you don't have to sit there and watch me make meatballs. But you want to thoroughly combine them. You don't want to overmix your meat loaf mixture, because then sometimes they can tend to be tough, but you want to mix it enough that it stays together without the breadcrumbs. So breadcrumbs is usually tradition in meatballs, and my original meatball recipe on my comfort food not playlist but video, of course we add breadcrumbs to the meatloaf too, but of course that's grain. That's usually wheat bread. They do make gluten-free meatballs, but then they wouldn't be keto. So to make them sort of the keto way, we're just going to bind them with the egg and the Parmesan cheese. And trust me, they hold together fantastically. I actually am going to add them to my sauce at the end, but that is not an option. But they held together even in the sauce, because that was really what the experiment was going to be for me. If I added them to my sauce. Now, this Parmesan cheese that I'm using is not freshly grated, so it tends to be a little bit more salty. So I just really held off on the normal amount of salt that I would normally add to the meatballs. But depending, of course, what kind of cheese you want, and of course, to taste. If you're a person who likes salty meatballs, then, adjust accordingly. But this is just a 2 tablespoon scoop. I don't know the numbers of them because mine aren't labeled with the numbers. But it makes nice sized meatballs, not too big, not too small. I think I mentioned in the comfort food video that my pop used to make giant meatballs, not giant like softballs, but good size, a good small baseball size meatballs. And he would bake them in the oven, which is where I think I told you how to do last time. This time we're going to fry them, and I'm doing that because I don't want them to dry out. One of the things is we're not actually adding extra fat to these meatballs, and this is 97% lean. So if you are doing keto, you might want to consider actually using a higher fat meat. Of course, that will give more flavor. As you know, fat is flavor. But if you're doing keto, then you want to make sure you add that extra fat to your diet as well. Okay? But like I said, we're just going to use the egg and the cheese to bind these meatballs together. Now, depending, of course, too, what size meatballs you make will depend on how long you have to cook them for. And now I've tried to make mine as evenly as possible. I got, I think, about a half dozen meatballs out of this half a pound of meat being this size. Or maybe it was 8 even, I don't even remember. But you just want to, after you scoop the amount into your hand, you want to go ahead and just roll them around. Again, don't overwork them because, again, you don't want them to be tough and chewy. All right, but you want them to be able to hold together. So there you go. Hi. So what we have here is just a medium-sized frying pan, depending on how many meatballs you have, because you don't want to crowd the pan. You might want to do them in 2 batches. And then I've just put olive oil on the bottom. Now, olive oil is a very high smoke. It has a very low smoke point, high smoke point. Basically, it smokes quickly. I just forgot my words. I'm sorry. So just put it in just till it starts to get warm, and then I'm going to go ahead and fry the meatballs. All right. And then there isn't really much to these. And if you're the kind of person who likes your meat well done, you might want to just leave them in the frying pan a little bit longer. But basically, that's all we're going to do is we're just going to fry them on one side, turn them over, really try to do 3 sides. I almost tried to like pyramid them. I didn't quite turn it to its other side as well as I turned it onto like its third. I don't know if that makes sense to you. But you just want to make sure that they fry until they're cooked on the outside if you're going to add them to sauce. If you're going to eat them straight from the frying pan and whatever, you just want to make sure that you cook them a little bit longer in here. If you don't want an extra crispy outside, you can, once you've turned them over, just cover them. Let them cook through a little bit. It won't take very long because they're not very big. That also does depend on your meatballs and what size you make them, okay? So if I could, I sometimes wish there was scratch and sniff TV. I know I feel that way when I watch cooking shows, but when I'm cooking for you guys, the smells are just, you know? So you can see there how I'm trying not to actually like turn the meatball completely over, but I kind of have all of the cook sides facing like the side a little bit so that we can cook them in like thirds. Make sure we'll pretty much try to get as many sides as possible. So let's see. I mentioned all the add-ins. Of course, if you have a favorite ingredient, if you like to add basil to your meatballs, if you're a person who likes a lot of oregano, absolutely go ahead and adjust the seasoning to your taste. This is just a very quick recipe with ingredients that many people have at home. So I think Italian seasoning is probably the only thing that some people have and some people don't. But otherwise, I feel like everything people normally have at home. So now the sauce recipe video, because it's a semi-homemade sauce. The original sauce recipe, comfort food recipes that we made, I made a homemade sauce from scratch so I can control the amount of sugar in there myself. This one we're going to do a semi-homemade. It's going to come up in a couple of days. And then we're also going to make stuffed peppers. And they're gluten-free. They're not keto, but they'll be gluten-free. And we'll have that coming up in a couple of days too. So if you like that, stick around. Yeah, it's fun. They are going to be a little different than my dad did, but I'll talk you through how he made them a little bit differently, okay? And then we also served this with regular pasta one night, and then I made some soy pasta that I got at Aldi's another night, which is actually really good. It was an organic soybean pasta, which was really good for gluten-free night. But you know, there's lots of gluten-free pastas out there on the market. Okay? And now we're just going to get cooking to that third side. But you guys don't need to stick around for that. All right? Give it a little shake, shake. So that video up to this point was 1.5 times speed. So if you're actually timing how long it took me. But now we'll just finish it off. So I turned it off, but I left them on the pan just to continue to cook through a little bit more. And now I'm just stirring up my sauce. So these I'm going to continue to cook in the sauce. But otherwise, at this point, I would turn the stove off, cover them, and allow the internal temperature just to come up a little bit. They won't steam so much that they'll get soggy. That was what I wanted to share with you. And here they are without sauce. These are the 3 that I left without sauce. And then the rest are going to go in that pot. Ooh, yum, 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 yum. All right. Now, you can serve these a variety of ways. You could go ahead and make them in a crock pot, make them small meatballs in a crock pot for an hors d'oeuvre. You can serve them with pasta. You could serve them as heroes. You know, you guys, I would love to hear what you do with them. Okay? But we're going to go ahead and finish them in the sauce and then enjoy them. Made them with sausage tonight. So if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments down below. I'd love for you guys to give this video a thumbs up and then share with friends and family. Anybody you know might be on food restrictions that may need to be able to try this recipe. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe, and when you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. And as always, you take care, God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye!